I'm doing a test now for people who can follow on screen. So if I talk to people, I have like this I can only see one eye, so I have to sort of scan to see what's going on. But I actually have a pretty good central vision.
Okay.
Yeah, I can still see very sharply.
Welcome to the See-Through Podcast, a podcast that creates transparency on life with a disability through raw conversations with the disability community. I'm the host, Lance Johnson, and I live and podcast with the eye disease, Retinitis Pigmentosa, or RP for short. In this episode, I talk with the very interesting Morten Bonde, who is a legally blind art director for Lego. He's also an author and public speaker. Morten and I discuss the inspiration behind his book, To Blindness, Now What? His retinitis pigmentosa diagnosis story, and how being mindful has helped him rewire the negative voices in his head to actually be helpful voices, and much more. But before our interview begins, make sure you subscribe to the channel, follow on social media. The handle is @SeeThroughPod. And if you want bonus episodes and exclusive content, go join the See-Through Few over on Patreon. The link is in the show description. And with that all said, here's my talk with Morten. Morten Bonde. Did I say that right?
Yeah, that was almost right.
Welcome to the See-Through Podcast.
Thank you very much.
Where are you talking to me from right now?
I'm talking to you from Denmark in Scandinavia. So, okay. Northern Europe.
All right. Yeah, it's always fun when I talk to people from, around the world, because it's kind of, I'm still blown away from the fact that I can have a podcast, from my bedroom,
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, it is.
A lot of people forget about how crazy that is, but it blows my mind every single time. But yeah, welcome to the See-Through Podcast. We're going to have a cool conversation. We have a lot in common, I think. And I think, and I guess we'll have to talk first to figure out if we actually do have things in common. But I do know one thing for sure. You have retinitis pigmentosa.
Yeah.
I have retinitis pigmentosa. You work in a creative field. You work at Lego Agency, right?
Yeah, correct.
And I have worked in several ad agencies over my life, and I currently work as a video editor here in New York City.
Okay.
So both visually heavy fields for someone, with RP.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a lot to connect with there. But I say before all that, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself to people listening who may be not that familiar with you.
Oh yeah, you said my name almost correct. I was damn close. In Denmark, we say Morten Bonde, and
okay.
And I've heard a lot of things, Bond, and when I check into hotels in the US, they say welcome, Mr. Bond, and I think I'll go with that, no problem.
Yeah, you get that James Bond, That's
exactly,
classic. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think, by the way, we might have a lot of things in common, but there's something we don't have in common: different hairstyle.
I like the look, though, man. It looks sharp, honestly. Like I tell people all the time when they have a clean shaved head, I'm like, it's sharp looking, honestly.
Yeah,
it's clean and sharp. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I'm 48 years old. Yeah, I live in Denmark. I have 2 sons and a beautiful wife. And you mentioned I work for the Lego Group and Lego Agency, which is the in-house advertising agency, you can call it, but it's almost like all communication that comes out from the Lego Group comes from Lego Agency. So a huge agency with several hundreds of people. So, and then I have retinitis pigmentosa, diagnosed in 2002. when I had been working in the advertising industry for about, I think, 4 years. So, yeah, that's very, very short.
Yeah, 4 years in that. So 4 years to your advertising career, that's when you were diagnosed?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And you're legally blind, right?
Yeah.
And you have, I read online that you have less than 4 degrees of vision left? Okay.
Yeah, I'm doing a test now for people who can follow on screen. I have, so if I talk to people, I have like this I can only see one eye, so I have to sort of scan to see what's going on. But I actually have a pretty good central vision.
Okay.
Yeah, I can still see very sharply with my central vision. But then I have what you could almost, if you could imagine it, if someone puts a donut in front of your face.
Yes.
So I can see through the little hole in the center, but then I also have peripheral vision, which is a huge help because I can almost go for a fully sighted person. Because when I walk around, it's, I just move my eyes around and then I have sort of an idea of what's going on in front of me. And so I can cheat people. I can pretend that I can see often, but that also comes with problems because then there is a lot of things I don't see, and people don't think that I have a visual disability. So a lot of misunderstandings arise because I just ignore people and they maybe make signs to me and I just pretend that they're air and they think, what the hell is this arrogant idiot? He's not.
I can relate to that. And I'm not even legally blind, and that happens to me all the time, like, because I have these central blind spots as well on top of RP. Like I can't see my hand right now, but I can see my hand, maybe here I can see my hand and it's out further away. So it's kind of weird, and it's odd how the eyes worked and how it kind of, your brain tries to fill in those gaps. So
because I don't have a blind spot as such. I have sort of flickering bright lights that
I have,
like fireworks.
Yeah. I have that basically all day almost, I would say. I'm used to it at this point.
Yeah. It's almost like static on the TV. Like that's how it is. And then I have this little hole in the middle, and it gets really intensified when I look at when I go out, when I look at the bright sky. It's like it just hits all that light, just goes ballistic in the brain or whatever happens. But it's very. I always wear sunglasses when I go out.
Yeah, I've been wearing hats a lot lately. Like growing up, I didn't really wear hats that much. I have it on backwards now. But when I go outside, it's like it's almost like I have to have the combo. You know? And I notice if I don't wear a hat, I'm like punching myself as I'm walking around. I'm like, gosh, I should have worn my hat. It's like my eyes are struggling. I would just say the easiest way I have sensitive eyes to light. That's what I tell people.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. I have a question right out the gate. Like, you were 4 years into your career at Lego?
No, at that point I was just working at a regular advertising agency.
Okay. And all right, and then you get diagnosed. So I'm always intrigued by this because I'm assuming, I'm going to do some deductive reasoning here, that you're the first in your family to have RP.
I think I actually think that my father's family have retinitis pigmentosa without knowing it, without knowing the name of what it is that they had, because I hear stories about, there was a cousin who went to the United States back in the 60s and he was blind, and there was my father's aunt. I remember when I was a kid, she was always sitting indoor with sunglasses with those yellow, reddish. But they didn't. They always just said that she had, she was low vision, right? They didn't. Yeah,
it probably was RP.
Yeah, I think it was. It makes sense that that's how it was. But they didn't really think about it. It took several years. My father came one day and said, just out of the blue, he said, "Oh, I remember having a cousin who was blind," and I was like, "I've been digging into family history for years," and I said, "What? Idiot! I've been, it didn't occur to you that that might be related." Oh no, I didn't really think about it. Like, so I think there's something on my father's side, maybe, but it doesn't really make a difference. Well, maybe it does. Maybe it does because the whole the line of inheritance and all that. My
Yeah.
my two sons, will they carry? Will they develop
Hmm.
it or whatever? I think they won't have RP like the disease or the uh, the impairment as such, but they can carry on the genes and pass them on to the next generation and all that. But
Yeah. So it'd be like, for example, that's why I was asking, because I growing up, my mom has RP and she's legally blind. So basically all I'm saying with that is I was aware of RP and I knew it was a thing and I knew that I could potentially have it.
mm,
And I was told I had RP when I was around the age of 12, but it wasn't affecting me at that age.
no,
So like, when you're that young, it doesn't really, you don't really digest that information.
no,
So you just kind of sit on it for a while, and then you try to wrap your mind around it as you grow older, and then
yeah,
maybe you start to experience some sight loss, which I am now. And so my point with all that is, I'm always interested with people who weren't quite aware, like RP wasn't on their radar, and then they're just hit with a diagnosis. So like,
yeah.
can you tell me your diagnosis story?
Yeah, I can. I was 29, and when I was a kid, in Denmark, and you guys over there, you laugh when I share this story because we play the badminton is actually Olympic high
Yeah.
performance you know game here in Denmark, and I know you played at beaches and stuff like that, but
It's fun.
it's a big thing here, and I was playing that when I was a kid until the age of 16 or something like that, and then I stopped playing. And I remember being invited to a game when I was around 28, and I was looking forward to it because I hadn't been playing for so many years, and I just experienced weird things going on when I was playing. I think it's a shuttlecock. It's called the ball, whatever, and
Yeah.
it flies through the air, and then you just hit the shuttlecock, and then you play, and a lot of times on that evening, it just disappeared out of thin air, and just landed right next to me. So it's just like my partner who was looking at me, what the hell's going on? Why? And I'm
Yeah.
constantly losing the ball, and so after a couple of you know matches that we had, I just went to the ophthalmologist and the eye doctor, and he couldn't see there was something going on. Everything was fine. I could see perfectly fine when I looked at all the letters there, and then they sent me on to the facility in Denmark. It's sort of the where you make where you go deeper into genetic research and all that. And they told me I have retinitis pigmentosa. I
Mm.
remember going there with my wife, and I had this idea that no, I'm gonna go there. And they're finally gonna figure out what's wrong. They're gonna give me a pill or an operation or whatever. So I wasn't prepared at all. I was just sitting in the doctor's office, and he looked at me. Morten, I regret to have to tell you that you have an eye disorder, a genetic eye disorder that will make you go blind, and there's no cure. And I was like, what the hell? What did he just
Yeah.
say? Like that was just no. And then I did, I think, what most men do. I said, well, let's just pretend it's not there. So I
Yeah.
continued my life as there's nothing. Yeah, it's not gonna mean anything for me. I know they say that I'm gonna be blind. Yeah, but let's
Yeah.
pretend it's not there. So I just kind of avoided it, or didn't want to confront that or face that.
Mm. No, I relate to that. I put it off, even knowing I had RP at that young age. Like I put it off. I put it off till I couldn't anymore.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where my perspective comes from, because now I have this podcast and I'm trying to be like open about it, versus the opposite of what I used to do was just keep it all inside and just like make lies. But yeah, what I actually played tennis in high school. My dad was a great tennis player, and he kind of got me involved with tennis. And lately I live in New York or in Brooklyn, and they have these like parks where they have these like brick walls where you can kind of hit,
Yeah.
and it bounces back to you.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to get back into it, but there's so many times where that happens, what you're saying, where I just don't see it.
Yeah.
And then it goes right by me. And then there's sometimes where I see it perfectly, and then there's sometimes where I just don't see it at all. And I'm like, look, and then it'll like fly right by my head. And then, so I noticed a big difference from thinking back to my high school days playing tennis versus, now. So it's like, that's like, to me, the most evidence I have of my vision loss is like just practicality of trying to think back on, how my vision was then versus now. I mean, I even played high school football, and, I'm running around a football field, trying to tackle people, and that, who knows it, who knows, but it's like, it's just interesting that you found out through a sport. That's a first for this podcast.
Okay. Yeah. That was totally coincidental. I think when I look back, I remember when we were in southern France that must have been like almost 8 years earlier, prior to this event. And I remember we were driving in the mountains, and on this mountain hill there were these paragliders, I think it's called, and I looked up, and my girlfriend at that time, she said, "Whoa, look at all those!" And I looked up, and I only saw two. And I didn't. We didn't think more about it, whatever. But I think when I look back, like that's almost 8 years before being diagnosed. I remember that episode where I only saw a couple of, and they were just like a lot of them. So I must have had it all already there, but it was way out there, so I didn't really notice it. I
have a similar story too. I was out on a beach at night, and there was a meteor shower. Where I went to college at was in Wilmington, and it's a beach town, and I went out specifically to see the meteor shower and the shooting stars, and apparently they were everywhere, just constantly, and the person I was with was like, "Oh wow," pointing, and then I'm like looking up, and I think I saw one maybe the whole night, because it's also at nighttime too, so it's even harder to see. So and that was when I was like 20. I think I was 21 years old then. So that's another key moment for me, kind of realizing, hey, maybe this RP thing is real, like kind of like what you said, just kind of pretending it's not. It's cool to have connected stories like that. It's always fun to hear. But another thing that we connect on, and I want to hear more about, is your advertising. So you're like we said, you're 4 years into your ad agency days. What do you do at an ad agency, by the way?
Transforming problems. A customer has not a problem as such, but have a case. They have a new X, something like an iPhone or something, and they say, we have this gizmo. Go make it sellable for us. How can we make that a sexy thing for a target group? So it's about looking into what is the unique selling proposition here. What is it that how is this going to enrich the population? So coming up with that idea that makes this connect to the feelings, to the emotions of the audience, the target group, so they will say, "Well, I need that thing." So that's in a nutshell. I think.
But your job title is art director.
Yeah, that's just a industry label. I think. Okay. An art director is a concept developer and a campaign creator. And it goes from being very, very into creating visuals, artwork, um, posters and all that
Yeah.
visual stuff, but also just thinking about how do we translate this brief into something
Yeah.
that is communicating the unique selling points of the propositions of the product. Well, that's more in the generic advertising industry. At the Lego Group, it's been about coming up with stories that goes with the Lego themes. So for
Yes.
instance, Lego City has been my area for many years, and the Lego designers come up with a cool police, a police theme for 20 whatever, and we then have to take that and transform that into stories that make the kids sort of relate to it, and roles and characters and all that, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really neat, and would involve a lot of creativity, and it's neat that you work for such a company that's so well known. That's like a global company. Like my nephew is obsessed with Lego, so
Yeah.
it's just kind of like there has to be a sense of pride behind working for a company like that. But what I love about it is like, and I didn't notice before you said it, but you didn't start at Lego, and
No.
then you're diagnosed, and somehow you were able to power through that diagnosis and say, you know what, I'm gonna stay in this visually heavy field, because that's kind of what I did. I'm still at video editing. Like I used to be behind the camera more, but now I transitioned to editing because now I'm sitting at a desk and I can look at my screen and I can work proficiently that way.
Yeah.
So I would love to know about your early days at work, pre-diagnosis, getting diagnosed, and then how has that changed to your work now at Lego?
I think for many years I didn't really feel the impact of it,
Yeah.
on a conscious level. I think on a non-conscious level, I was slowly just adapting, but without realizing that I was adapting. So I think that up till 16, I was just, playing the no, nothing is wrong with me kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I started at the Lego Group in 2009, and all those years from around 2002 to 9, I think when I look back, there were a couple of I wrote the book. I could see the poster
Yeah.
back behind me. I have a couple of stories from my agency days where, for instance, I was traveling to Finland. I was going to do a campaign with Markus Grönholm, he was a world champion in rally. The and I, Looking back at that was a nightmare trip, because I was going on my own, and
Yeah.
everything went wrong. The plane was delayed. There was a snowstorm. There was a ferry who went into a bridge, and everything just went wrong. And when I look back at that, everything was made even more difficult because I didn't share with anyone that I am actually really struggling
Yeah.
with finding my way. So I had I was just slowly wearing myself down from not being open about it, so people couldn't really help me. Um, and then I started in 9, and I decided that I didn't want to say anything about me having a visual disability, or my strategy was to just get the job, you know, and
Yeah.
show that I have no problems working and doing what like everyone else. And then I would slowly kind of,
Yeah.
let people know that I have a disability. But I think RP is so difficult because people, but you're not really impacted by it because you walk around and you look like it's just,
Mm-hmm.
okay, then you're probably right. You don't want to go too much into that. So no, it's really, really tough on me and all that. So I just, until
Yeah.
16, that's when I crashed and burned.
Okay. Yeah, I relate to that so much. I've been in job interviews knowing that I have RP and that it's a job where would be like a videographer, or something like that, and I 110% wouldn't bring it up.
No.
and I had the same philosophy. I was like, I'll get the job. And then if I have to, I'll tell them then, but at least my foot's in the door then. They get to know me, they get to know my work ethic, and they get to know that, I can do good work still. And then I'll be locked in. And that's kind of what happened. Like I didn't tell an employer until I was 27 years old, And that was a big moment for me. And that was kind of the first time I was like, and I talk about it on this podcast sometimes. I call it coming out with someone with RP. You have this like announcement, and it's like that's a big step, because you're self-identifying yourself, as someone with a visual impairment, and as someone like you said, especially men, we don't want to put that label on ourselves. We don't want to, and we don't want people to think that we want attention, special attention, or we don't want to think people to think that we can't do as much as we can do. And, and the older I get, the more I look back and I just kind of shake my head at that thought process, and I get frustrated with my younger self, because that's like, it is backwards way of thinking, it's not very, and I call that internalized, ableism, which is a huge talk we could have. And that's something people with invisible disabilities really struggle with, I think, maybe more than other people with disabilities. I don't want to say that with definitive, but it's like, we struggle with that with invisible disabilities because a lot of the time we can hide it until we can't. So when we do finally announce it, we're worried because, like you said, hey, my coworkers can see me walking around the office. They've seen me on video shoots. They've seen me do this, this, and that. And now I'm going to say, hey, guys, I have RP and I'm visually impaired. And then treat me as if I'm like blind is what they hear. Like, Lance thinks he's blind. I'm obviously not blind, and there's a difference between being legally blind and blind. But most people, they go straight to blind, and you get in your head about that. You're like, well, if I announce it, there's going to be all this confusion. Then I have to explain it. And then people are going to think that I'm being dramatic. You go, the wheels turn and turn and turn and turn. And so, yeah, I relate to that. And I do wonder now, like sometimes, like every now and then I'll see a job, like I'm a freelancer, I work as a freelancer, video editor.
Yeah.
But every now and then I'll see a job that really appeals to me and I'll apply for it. And they're, they have that question. It's like, do you have a disability?
Oh, they ask that?
Yeah. At the end of the application, or at least here in the States.
I would be surprised if anyone would do that here in Denmark. And maybe in the future, I would be surprised if they do that also in the US. I think. I think it's more of like, do we need to provide accessibility for you? And there's debate about like, is that a trap? Is that question a trap? Like, are you going to check it and they're going to be like, let's not hire him because he's going to cost us money because we have to make everything accessible for him. Yeah, that would be the risk, I think.
That's definitely, or, they just, if you want to give people credit, they could just trying to help people out. But I don't know. I'm skeptical. And that's my point is whenever that box pops up, do I have to check if I have a disability? I'm like, do I? Do I want to check that box? And to be honest, I don't know the answer if I should or shouldn't. But anyways, let's get to your book because, you have it behind you.
Yep.
And you also have Star Wars poster, which I respect.
My office is, I have Back to the Future. I have Terminator 2, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then I have E.T. on that wall. So I have all the classics.
Yeah. E.T. is one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah. And Back to the Future is also, that's just, wow. Yeah. I remember reading
the classics.
Reading my kids, they were way too young when we were watching that for the first time. They didn't understand anything. So it took upon me to translate, narrate the whole movie. And, that's pretty intense when Doc Brown is just rambling all his nonsense and high speed.
Yeah.
Like, I just had to make pauses because I was just, totally I was exhausted for, that's another thing. Love movies.
Yeah, that is neat. And I said I want to talk about your book, but you just mentioned your two sons, and you have a wife. You're a family man, and that's something I'm interested in because I was recently married, but I don't have any children. And if I pass on RP to my kids, I'm okay with it because one, it is what it is, and I'm glad I'm here. That's kind of how I look at it. But it's like. But what I am afraid of is RP going to affect me as a father? Is it, and I would love to know your thoughts on that as a father with RP. Like, are there complications or?
I was diagnosed just the year when my wife and I had decided to get our first house built by a company, and I remember really, really thinking about, would I, knowing that I'm gonna be blind one day, should I even attempt having kids? Would that be what? And I was thinking about the advertising industry. Should I stop doing that? Should I?
Yeah.
And I think I think the reason why I didn't change my line of work and I just had kids because I didn't want to. I didn't have the courage to do something radical. Like I just fell in line with what would it would be normal just to continue on the path. I'm happy that I did today, but I really was asking myself those questions. Would it be fair to bring kids into the world and they would have a dad that was slowly becoming blind? But I think today they actually see. And we can come back to that because I made a huge decision in 16 about how to live with blindness, and I think that decision has made a difference for my kids. They are 16 and 18 now, and and I started to change the way that I was behaving in a very radical way. Instead of always being concerned about what would happen, I started changing this attitude, this mindset towards obstacles and challenges in life. So instead of telling about how you were supposed to become a sort of a person who just takes opportunities and go with what comes and just accepting things, instead of just talking about it, I just started living it. So they see that instead of hearing about it. So I think the advantage is that they have developed a sense of helping without needing to be being told that they always have an eye open to, well, is there something I can help my dad with? It's kind of natural for them to do. So that kind of thinking also is impacting their life in general. So when they're out in the public and they have this sort of "can I help you" sort of attitude, which is a great thing, I think. So and then they also learn and have learned that is even though you have a disability, well, there's nothing wrong with my head. There's nothing wrong with anything other than my eyes. Instead of having this sort of, oh, this is he said he is visually impaired, then he probably can't speak either, or hear, and he probably is dumb, and all those sort of prejudices that goes along with having a disability. So, yeah.
No, that must be make you proud again. Talk about being proud of your work, but then you get to see your kids grow up and adapt. It's like you adapted to RP, and now your kids are adapting to your RP, but in like a positive way that also they can take with them into their own lives and have a better perspective than they would have, a more open-minded and helpful perspective than they would have if you didn't have RP. So it's kind of odd how RP sometimes gives. It can give you things. It can give you perspective, and talking about your book, I haven't read it, so I can't pretend that I have. But from my research, what I want to talk to you about is it kind of has this tells your story, which I feel like is my favorite kind of story. Is there's a character arc of being, kind of hopeless to embracing, the challenges, and now kind of thriving and kind of embracing that, and living life. And I'm sure your kids, see that, and that's inspirational to them, on top of, people with RP who also read your book, people with disabilities who read your book. So like, I know it's something you could probably talk like hours and hours and hours on. So I'm trying to think about how we can break it down.
Let me just, I can do this because, the book is, I'm inspired by storytelling, right? So,
Yeah.
so the book is almost like a hero's journey. The subtitle is A Journey from Hopelessness Street to Possibility Road.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually what the book is. It is a guide in a way. And there are three parts of the book. And the first part is about, me, my life, my life with RP, and I tell stories and anecdotes. And the point of sharing my story is to show people that you can actually, think and be convinced that you are a person who can this and this and this and can't do this and this and this.
Yeah.
And then you live your life believing in all the things that you kind of been raised to believe by your culture and your society and your parents. So in a sense, it's not directed as such to people with blindness or disabilities. It's actually sort of it's a book that shows you the steps from being a person who feels limited all the time to becoming a person who can see possibilities, in the limitations. So how can I turn this limitation into a possibility, into something that makes me grow as a person and makes me stronger because I endured or experienced limitations. And the first part is about that. And then the second part is, okay, when you at one point in your life realize that, I can't stand this version of myself any longer, what can you do to make the transformation? I had this experience in 16. I suffered from stress and depression. I simply collapsed one day at work. I was handling 22 animated movies at the same time, like small 2-minute versions.
Yeah.
And they were in all different stages. So they were at the script, and some had gone into animation, and some were in an animatic state, and they were sort of all over the place. And one day, I was also a senior art director, so I had like 4 art directors who came to me for advice, and they came for direction and all that. And I did that with that limited vision. So my system just said, no more, you are insane if you keep on doing this. So the body simply shut down. Like I couldn't, my hands were shaking, and I couldn't, it refused to do anything. Wow. Yeah. And,
so when you say shut down, what do you mean? What you like couldn't function? Is that
it couldn't function?
And you were in your office?
I was actually home. It was the morning.
Okay.
I was sitting on the edge. I was sitting on the bedside, and I was just like, I looked at my hands. They were just doing this. They were just shaking, and I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't think. I was just, I was just, I crashed simply, and I didn't know at that time that I was legally blind. I hadn't been at the ophthalmologist for 7 years, so I called in sick, and I was on sick leave for almost for several months, and we didn't even know why. And I was going to therapists and psychologists, and we were trying to figure out what was wrong. And I didn't mention. I mentioned one time that I had a little bit of, I had something with my eyes, but they were kind of, one thing at a time, right? Now you bring up too many problems. Okay, come again. Yeah. How about your childhood? And that's and one day my wife said, Morten, how about your vision? When were you tested the last time? And I said, it's 7 years since. And then I went to the ophthalmologist, and he looked at me and said, oh, do you know that you are legally blind? And I said, no, I don't. And he said, whoa, you have only like 4 degrees of vision left, and that's bad. What do you do?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I'm an art director working with visual communication. He's like, what? and then, uh, and then the fun thing, when I was leaving the office, and I turned around and said, oh, I should probably stop driving then, right? And he's like, what? Are you driving? So I was just
Oh.
living a life like nothing
Mhm.
was wrong with me, and that's when it all started, and I had this for half a year. I was just becoming more and more sad and depressed, and had no energy, and people around me were kind and helping me, and everyone was convinced that I was the best thing for me was to retire in a way.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there at the job center, the local job center, and I had all these people around me, and I just felt so you know uh, so hopeless. And I remember they were talking about clauses and procedures, and how they could prepare me for retirement, and then I had this moment where I felt that this is it. Now I could, if I disappeared from the surface of this earth, it wouldn't matter. I could just,
Ooh.
it didn't really matter at all because I had no future. I was, I couldn't,
Mm.
I couldn't keep up being the person that I wanted to be. So I
Mm.
felt that in a way I died there. But when I felt that sort of very dramatic loss of identity in like a second, I also had this extremely feeling of liberation, like freedom from all the identities. So I had this moment where I just felt so free, and then I heard a voice in my head, and I talk about voices, and it's not like a schizophrenic voice; it was more like a
Yeah.
thought, and that voice said to me, "Morten, what do you want out of life?" And that was just so powerful. I remember getting up from the chair, and I said, "Sorry, guys, I had to stop the meeting. I have to go back and figure out what it is that I want to do with my life." And that started the whole process. And so the second part is about, I started digging into, philosophy, ancient philosophy, Eastern philosophy, religion, why are we the people we are? Why do we think the way that we think? And I
Yeah.
wanted to see, because I had this habit every time I went into a situation where I felt challenged, like someone is asking me to do something. I had this spontaneous feeling of, apprehension and, almost fear from what if I couldn't do it? What if they would figure out that I was blind? What if they,
Yeah.
all those, they were just like,
Yeah.
and I
Uh-huh.
said to myself, can I reprogram that system in a way? So the second part is about how can you actually reprogram the subconscious or the unconscious mind from being always on alert to be like, oh, interesting. I'm going to look into that. So that's the second part. And the third part, knowing is not enough. You have to apply, you have to, put it into experience. So the third part is about, I gave myself 4 challenges through 4 months that would change some of the things that I was struggling with. And the first thing was about negativity. I was always having this inner dialogue, this negative voice who was like, you idiot, you blind fool. Like it said all these things. And I said, okay, let's see if I can change that one. And I did that for 30 days. I gave myself the task. I call it my stop, swap, thought game. And it's about being mindful in your everyday life. So every time I noticed that the inner voice would say, shitty eyes or something, whoa, I had to say stop, swap thought. And then I will have 5 seconds to change that. Then that thought into, I have to figure out how to come up with a positive,
Yeah.
the opposite. And I had to do that for a month, and I literally changed that inner dialogue that I had. I also started experimenting with mindfulness, meditation, and visualizations, and self hypnosis, and I mentioned that about that in the book. I had to challenge the feeling of always, worrying about things. Why always being worried about things? So,
Yeah.
so that was the next challenge, and the third challenge was about challenging fear. And the fourth challenge was speaking about this, writing the book, becoming a motivational speaker, and just, talk about it and share it so I could, put my story and my experiences into, use. So
Yeah.
if so that's the book, and I narrated it also as an audiobook, so it also exists as an audiobook.
No, I'm 110% gonna buy and read your book, because I one, you said a lot in there that I connected to, and I appreciate you being open, and I know you're open in your book, and you're open on a lot of podcasts and you speak, but just for me and you having a conversation, being open to me about feeling like you had this death. And when I was younger, I that was my biggest struggle. I think whenever I would think when I was younger, if I ever were to become blind, that I'd want to just die, and that's a hard pill to swallow, because RP, you can't really predict its projection. Part of me had this hope of my vision will just stay stable and I'll be one of those people. But then there's also, people who, their vision just, digresses really fast in a short period of time. So, there's kind of this spontaneity that you can be afraid of it. And I'm starting to wrap my head around that. And I'm still definitely scared of that fast progression of loss, but I don't feel as scared. And I also don't feel like, if that were to happen, that I'd want to die now. But when I was younger, like, I felt that way, and that was a heavy thing to feel, because I felt that way. That's such a strong feeling, but I didn't say it to anyone, and that's the first time I've said that on this podcast. But yeah, I had feelings when I was younger where I was just kind of just like what you described. What's the point of living if, in my mind, I thought that I was just going to be like, having to have, like, just be stuck in a house and, not have a purpose and not have a fulfilled career, not have a fulfilling family life. I'm married now, but I was also worried about, like, will someone want to date me? Will someone want to marry me? There's all these thoughts, and that kind of goes into what you're talking about, all these worries you have. And you know what? It's all in your head too. It's like, that's your inner voice that you're talking about, telling you this. And I'm fascinated by that, because you reprogrammed. You're saying you had to actively reprogram that voice in your voice that's kind of harsh on you. And that is hard to do. And that is a struggle that I still am struggling with. So yeah, I'm definitely fascinated by that.
Yeah. And the second part is actually where I describe all the tools that are available, and tools are probably not the right way to I think it's more like a way of life. It's a way of how you create a relationship to that inner voice, which is your imagination. We are gifted with a brain that can come up with every scenario possible. Ideas, imagination is literally creating the life that we live. So if we believe in an idea, if we believe in a thought, and we keep believing in that thought, strangely enough, how the subconscious works is that it is almost like a computer. It's a gigantic computer. It runs 95% of our life, and only 5% of the life we are conscious. We are knowledgeable about what's going on. So in 95% of our life, we are just, doing what we have programmed ourselves to do. So we think that we have free will, but we actually do what we have programmed ourselves. And the way that we program ourselves is via our thoughts. If you think the same thought again and again, and by the way, we do, like 90% of our thoughts are repetitive, so we think the same things every day. That's how you're going to program yourself. So every time you see something, then you see it with that filter of how you programmed yourself. So if you used to say, well, I have to be careful because I am legally blind, people cannot notice I have to be like this. I have to. Then you go. That is the personality that you create, and that's that was a shocker for me when I learned that. I also fortunately learned that you can actually change that, not 100% because we have traits that are genetically encoded into us. I think 50% of the personality we have is a genetic thing, but the other 50 is actually something you can change by becoming aware. And that's why nowadays I'm actually I'm a mindfulness instructor at the Lego Group, because I
Oh,
started
awesome.
5 years ago meditating every day. And it's very much about starting to recognize, becoming aware of the thoughts that you are thinking, and then deciding to change the thoughts. And you can only
Yeah.
do that if you are, present. If you are
Hmm.
present in this moment. And then we come back to the whole, Eastern Buddhism, the philosophy of becoming aware, being in the present moment. I'm very inspired by John Kabat-Zinn, who developed the mindfulness-based stress reduction program I think it's the University of Massachusetts. Um, uh, you know, uh, this idea of relating to whatever is, also your thoughts, accepting whatever is without judging it, and just being with it, and then recognize that there's something in my life that is not right. I'm not judging it. I'm just realizing it. And so not creating an enemy inside of yourself, but just realizing this is how it is, and then look for what can I do about it. And sometimes we
Yeah.
have to say there's nothing I can do. I can't change the situation, but I can challenge myself to change the way that I look at the situation. So creating a
Hmm.
new story about this shitty situation is actually in my power to create a new story about it.
Yeah, I love that. I love everything that you just said, and it's very well said and put. And I think that can go for the beauty of what you just said is that can, it's not just for people with RP. It's not just for
No,
advice for people with disabilities. That's advice for everyone. Everyone can be very hard on themselves. And so, yeah, I think that's amazing that, you're able to take something that, caused a lot of anxiety, and you are actively adapted your mind. And that people, I talk about this on this podcast a lot, is there's physical adaptations to living with a disability, but there's also, you have to have those mental adaptations,
yeah,
because you're in your head 24/7, So I think that ties into that theme, perfectly. Well, I have a siren.
yeah. They're coming for you or what?
Yeah,
No,
it's hard having a podcast in Brooklyn, I'm right. It's so noisy, but this
yeah,
mic does a great job of just kind of picking my
filtering.
voice up.
Yeah.
All right, so where can people find your book?
They can find it on Amazon, and
Okay.
they can. No, it's you can get it on Amazon. This is the cover. Uh,
Yeah.
um, Sentence to Blindness. Now what? And you can get it on Audible as an
Okay.
audio book, but it's also on Apple Books as an audio book. So
And you
just
you you narrated the audio book?
yeah, that was quite a project, because if you can only read one word at a time, and I'm speaking it with sort of enthusiasm, and in a way that it doesn't sound like I'm reading it. I'm just telling a story. Because then when you read a sentence like "get out of here," he whispered. Oh, so sorry. I have to go back and do it again. Like "get out of here," he
Yeah.
whispered. So because I can't read like a whole line at a time, I'm only reading the words and just make sense of it as I go along.
Yeah.
I was editing and speaking at the same time, so I was just no, I was uh, you know um, it was it was a helpful thing that I could, do all the things myself. So I set up my own studio. I bought a very good microphone, and I used GarageBand actually.
Nice.
And I just, did the whole thing myself. So I didn't have to go to a studio, and there wasn't a lot of editing afterwards because I did it, on the go.
Yeah, that's neat. That's very fascinating. Yeah, recording audio is harder than you would think it is, to get good, clean audio. There's a lot that goes into having clean audio and also getting a good performance. It's a performance. That's why there are such things as voiceover artists, and it's there's an art to it.
I do a lot of mindful, guided meditations. You can find them on my YouTube page. So I was used to using my voice. I also sing. I do cover versions, and they're also on my YouTube channel. And that was something I started doing because I had this limitation when I was in front of an audience. I didn't, when I had to scream about something, I felt a little bit embarrassed by that. So I started doing cover versions and just posted them on YouTube to get acquainted with the feeling of, embarrassment, like, oh my God, it's embarrassing putting out my cover version. So getting used to that, just do it anyway. If people laugh, it's all good, and if they like it, it's all good. So I had a lot of training using my voice before narrating the book, but also getting into the whole chemistry in your mouth. Like, when do you make click sounds, and how do you avoid that? You eat apples, you don't drink coffee, all that. There was a lot of research I had to do before doing the audiobook.
Yeah, there's a lot into it. And I wanted to add one little quick thing, because you're talking about public speaking. I remember I used to play, I was trying to do like a singer-songwriter thing for a while, and I would do some open mics. And there was one open mic I was doing a cover, and I forgot the entire second verse of the song.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just like, and then you have to wing it, and like that's like your fear, right? That's what you don't want to happen. And then it happens, and there's probably like maybe 30 people watching, and I just stopped the song, and I'm like, tell into the mic, I forgot the lyrics, and then everyone in the crowd was like, just keep going, going. And then I just started, and what I did, I just sang the first verse over again, and then I finished the song, and it was fine. And like, and that kind of is when it clicked to me. I was like, it's not as serious as you think it is.
No, exactly. Yeah. And if you dare to show that vulnerability, you actually inspire people even more, because I bet all those 30 people, they would say, oh, I'm glad it's not me standing up there. So everyone is with you. Everyone wants to see you do the best and cheer you up. So I think that's what I experience also when I stand in front of a crowd. They're with you. There are no throwing tomatoes or cans or whatever. like everyone are with you.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. Well, I think we're reaching the end here. You mentioned you can buy your book. People can buy your book. It's called Sentenced to Blindness, Now What? And they can buy it on Amazon. You also have a website. I'll have that URL in the show description. I'll have a link to Amazon as well. So if you're listening and you want to check out, Morten's book, do that. On your website, it's neat because you have a lot of YouTube videos and talks you've done.
Yeah.
So definitely go check that out. And anything else you want to plug?
No, I think it was great connecting. I think we should stay connected. It was a pleasure getting to know you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, thanks so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. And I love this conversation. I got a lot out of it, and I'm gonna buy your book. I'm gonna read it because essentially you sold me. You sold me. So
great. Thank you very much.